A sound of bare footsteps on the wooden deck made me turn my head. In 25 years of building my logistics empire, I had never witnessed anything as disturbing as that scene. A skinny girl in dirty clothes and disheveled hair had somehow managed to climb onto my 40-meter yacht, the Golden Horizon. "Your yacht's gonna blow up," she yelled, pointing frantically downwards. "There's a bomb under the boat." Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. Victoria almost dropped the champagne glass she was holding. Nathan, my 10-year-old son, stopped running across the deck and stared open-mouthed at the intruder. Captain Brooks immediately approached, clearly annoyed by the security breach. "I'm Benjamin Harrison, CEO of Harrison Logistics, and I was celebrating the biggest contract of my life. 3 years of intense negotiations had resulted in a $200 million deal. That moment should have been perfect. Charleston Harbor shimmered under the afternoon sun, and my most important guests were waiting for my arrival for the official toast. "How did this kid get in here?" Victoria whispered, holding Nathan's arm protectively. "Where's security?" The girl kept gesturing, her small hands visibly trembling. "Please, listen. You guys need to get out of here now. I saw when they put it there." "Girl, you're trespassing on private property," Brooks said, trying to keep his tone professional. "I'm calling the authorities." "No," she pleaded, tears starting to stream down her dirty face. "There's no time. The bomb. It's gonna explode." My business experience taught me to quickly assess complex situations. I observed her desperate eyes, the genuine urgency in her voice. Something told me this wasn't just some childish prank. "What's your name?" I asked, crouching down to her level. "Sophie," she answered between sobs. "My dad, he used to work for a boat company. Before he died, he told me about bad men who did terrible things." Victoria approached hesitantly. "Benjamin, we can't take this seriously. It's obviously some attempt to—" "To what?" I interrupted. "She's a kid. What would she gain by making this up?" Sophie wiped her nose with her torn sleeve. "I live by the docks. I saw 3 men putting something under your boat last night. It had wires and blinking lights." "That's absurd," Brooks muttered. "Our security is impeccable. Nobody can get close without authorization." "But I managed to get on," Sophie countered with simple, devastating logic. I felt a knot in my stomach. She was right. If a 9-year-old could bypass our security, others certainly could have done the same. My business success had made enemies over the years. The contract we were celebrating had been fiercely contested by several companies. "Victoria, take Nathan inside," I instructed, keeping my voice calm. "Benjamin, you're not seriously considering—" "I'm considering all possibilities," I replied. "Brooks, I need a powerful flashlight and basic diving gear." "Sir, with all due respect, this is unnecessary. I can assure you that." "Captain, I'm not questioning your competence," I cut in, "but I'm going to check personally." Sophie moved closer. "I can show you where I saw it. It was on the right side, near the back." "Port aft," Brooks translated automatically. My mind was racing. The timing was too suspicious. Right on the day of my greatest achievement, when dozens of important people would be on board. If there really was a threat, the consequences would be catastrophic. "Why should we trust you?" Victoria questioned, still reluctant. Sophie stared at her with impressive maturity for her age. "Because I have nothing to gain by lying, and you have everything to lose if I'm telling the truth." The silence that followed was deafening. Only the sound of waves against the hull and the gentle wind filled the air. I had to make a decision that could save lives, or make me look like the biggest fool of my career. "Brooks, get the equipment ready," I finally ordered. "We're going to check." The cold water of Charleston Harbor enveloped me as I dove with the waterproof flashlight. My breath was ragged inside my mask, not just from the physical exertion, but from the growing certainty that Sophie was right. Every second underwater felt like an eternity. When I finally found what I was looking for, my blood ran cold. Attached to the hull with industrial magnetic suction cups was a device the size of a small suitcase. Colored wires intertwined in a pattern I couldn't decipher, but the red digital display was unmistakable. 23 minutes and 47 seconds, and the count was ticking down. I surfaced with such force I almost hit my head on the hull. "Everybody off the boat, now!" I yelled, spitting out salt water. Brooks appeared at the side, holding a rope. "Mr. Harrison, what happened?" "Bomb! Real! 23 minutes." I managed to say between gasps. "Evacuate everyone immediately." The captain paled. He had served in the Navy for 15 years and recognized the seriousness in my voice. Without hesitation, he activated the emergency alarm. The blaring sound echoed throughout the golden horizon. "Attention, crew and passengers. Emergency evacuation procedure. Proceed immediately to the lifeboats. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." I climbed aboard, still dripping, and controlled chaos took over the deck. Victoria came running with Nathan, her eyes wide with panic. "Benjamin, what's going on?" "Sophie was right," I replied, hugging my son. "There's a bomb on the hull with an active timer. We have less than 20 minutes. Guests started emerging from the interior lounges, some still holding glasses, completely confused. The contrast was surreal. People dressed in thousands of dollars worth of clothes being evacuated because of a street girl's warning. "Where's Sophie?" I asked, looking frantically. "Here," she answered, appearing from behind one of the pillars. Her eyes were red, but there was an expression of relief mixed with terror. "You believed me." "Thank you for warning us," I said, putting my hand on her shoulder. "Now we need to get out of here." Brooks coordinated the evacuation with military precision. "First boat, women and children. Second boat, essential crew. Third boat, all other passengers." Victoria took Sophie's hand. "Come with us, sweetie." In 15 minutes, everyone was in the lifeboats, rowing quickly to get away from the golden horizon. I was the last to abandon ship, a naval tradition Brooks insisted I respect. I looked one last time at my yacht, 20 years of dreams and accomplishments represented in those 40 meters of luxury. We were about 200 meters away when it happened. The golden horizon simply vanished in an orange fireball that expanded into the sky. The explosion was so intense that the shockwave violently rocked our boats. Pieces of debris rained down into the water around us, some still burning. Nathan started to cry, not from fear, but from shock. Victoria hugged him tightly, whispering reassuring words. Sophie remained silent, watching the destruction with an expression that mixed sadness and anger. "My God," one of the guests murmured, "if it weren't for that girl." Coast Guard patrol boats arrived 15 minutes later, followed by at least 6 police cars at the nearest pier. Detective Rodriguez, a middle-aged Hispanic man with a gray mustache, immediately took control of the situation. "Mr. Harrison, I need a detailed account of what happened," he said, as we returned to solid ground. I told the whole story, from Sophie's appearance to the discovery of the bomb. Rodriguez listened attentively, making notes in a small notebook. "And you, young lady," he said, addressing Sophie, "tell me exactly what you saw." Sophie took a deep breath. "Last night, I was looking for food near the docks. I saw 3 men in a small boat approaching the big yacht. They were wearing dark clothes and had flashlights. One of them dove under the boat and stayed there for a long time." "Can you describe the men?" "One was tall and bald. Another had a beard and spoke with a weird accent. The third stayed in the boat, driving." Rodriguez wrote everything down. "Why did you decide to warn us?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears again. "My dad always told me that when bad people do bad things, good people need to speak up. He died trying to do the right thing." "Your dad? How did he die?" "Car accident," she answered softly. "But it wasn't an accident. He found out bad stuff at the company he worked for." I felt a shiver. "What company?" "Blue Coast Logistics." Rodriguez and I exchanged glances. Blue Coast was our main competitor, and they had lost the $200 million contract to us by a small margin. Marcus Thompson, their CEO, had been visibly irritated during the final negotiations. "Sophie, what was your dad's full name?" Rodriguez asked. "David Santos. He was an accountant at Blue Coast." Rodriguez made more notes. "We'll need to check some records. Mr. Harrison, would anyone know you were celebrating on the yacht today?" "Several people," I replied. "The contract was publicly announced yesterday. The celebration wasn't a secret." "Any known enemies? Disgruntled competitors?" I hesitated for just a second. Marcus Thompson from Blue Coast was particularly bitter about our win. But to try to assassinate us, I've seen cases of corporate revenge that went far beyond what was expected, Rodriguez said. "We'll investigate all possibilities." The next few hours were a whirlwind of statements, forms, and phone calls. Victoria took Nathan home, but Sophie stayed with us. She had nowhere else to go, and something told me our connection to this story was just beginning. "Detective," Sophie said, tugging on Rodriguez's sleeve, "I have something that might help." She pulled an old, scratched cell phone from her pocket. "My dad gave it to me before he died. He said it had important photos on it." Rodriguez examined the device. "We'll need our technical people to recover the data. It could be crucial for the investigation." While we waited for the next steps, I watched Sophie sitting beside me at the police station. That brave little girl had saved dozens of lives, including my family's. Her courage reminded me that heroism has no age or social class. "Sophie," I said softly, "you don't have anywhere to stay, do you?" She shook her head no. "How about staying with us while all this gets sorted out?" For the first time since I met her, Sophie truly smiled. 3 months later, I sat on the polished wooden bench of the Charleston Federal Courthouse, watching Marcus Thompson being escorted out of the room in handcuffs. The judge had just sentenced him to 25 years in prison for conspiracy, attempted multiple murder, and voluntary manslaughter. Justice had finally been served. David Santos's cell phone had been the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. Police technicians managed to recover hundreds of documents, photos, and recordings that proved how Blue Coast Logistics had been involved in contractual fraud for years. David had discovered the scheme and started collecting evidence to expose the company. The court considers this one of the most serious cases of corporate revenge we have ever judged, the judge declared during the sentencing. The defendant not only ordered the murder of an honest employee who was trying to expose crimes, but also planned the massacre of dozens of innocent people, including children. Sophie sat between Victoria and me, wearing a light blue dress that matched her eyes. In the last 3 months, she had transformed completely. Not just physically, with proper clothes, a haircut, and regular meals, but emotionally too. The scared girl who climbed onto my yacht had become a confident and joyful child. "Uncle Ben," she whispered, using the nickname she had created for me, "is the bad man going to be in jail forever?" "For a very long time," I replied, squeezing her small hand. "He won't be able to hurt anyone else." The investigation had revealed shocking details about David Santos's death. Thompson had discovered that the accountant was collecting evidence against the company and ordered his elimination. The car accident had been carefully planned to look like a fatality. Sophie had become an orphan not by chance, but by a calculated act of corporate greed. "Mr. Harrison," Detective Rodriguez said, approaching after the session, "I wanted to thank you again for your cooperation. Without Sophie's testimony and the phone evidence, Thompson would probably have gotten away with it." "The courage is in Sophie," I replied. "She's the one who deserves all the credit." Rodriguez smiled, looking at the girl. "Little hero, she saved many lives and brought justice for her father." 2 weeks after the trial, Victoria and I were at the family lawyer's office, signing the final adoption papers. Sophie would officially become Sophie Harrison, our legally recognized daughter. Nathan had been the most enthusiastic about the idea, gaining a younger sister who admired her courage. "Daddy Ben, Mommy Victoria," Sophie said, testing out the new titles with a shy smile. "Does this mean I get to live with you forever?" "Forever," Victoria confirmed, hugging her. "You're part of our family now." During the adoption process, we discovered more about Sophie's past. David Santos had been a hard-working and dedicated man, raising his daughter alone after his wife's death from childbirth complications. He had meticulously documented Blue Coast's crimes, not only out of a sense of justice, but because he wanted to leave a better world for Sophie. "Your father would be very proud of you," I told Sophie that night, as I helped her with homework from her new private school. "He raised a brave and honest girl." "He always said doing the right thing is sometimes hard, but it's always worth it," she replied, focused on her math problems. "I think he'd be happy knowing the bad men are in jail." The following month, we publicly announced the creation of the David Harrison Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping vulnerable children and supporting whistleblowers who expose corporate crimes. The name combined Sophie's father's first name with our last name, symbolizing how his memory would live on through our family. The foundation will offer legal, financial, and psychological support to people who have the courage to report crimes, especially when it puts them at risk. I explained during the launch press conference. David Santos died defending the truth. We want to ensure others in the same situation have the necessary support to follow his example. The Foundation's first project was the creation of an orphanage in Charleston, with capacity for 50 children. Sophie actively participated in the planning, suggesting improvements based on her own experience living on the streets. Kids need more than just food and a place to sleep, she explained during one of the planning meetings. They need to feel like someone truly cares about them. Victoria, who had initially been skeptical about adopting Sophie, became her biggest advocate. Benjamin, this girl has taught us more about courage and compassion in 3 months than we learned in years of business success, she told me one night. Our family is complete now. Nathan had also matured with the arrival of his adopted sister. He became protective and loving, teaching Sophie about her new privileged life while learning from her about resilience and gratitude. 6 months after the Golden Horizon explosion, I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when Sophie ran in holding a paper from school. "Daddy Ben, look," she shouted, showing me an A-plus essay. I wrote about real heroes. I read her essay, which talked about how heroism isn't about superpowers or fame, but about doing what's right even when it's difficult or dangerous. She had written about her father, about whistleblowers who expose crimes, and about ordinary people who help others in need. "I'm so proud of you," I said, hugging her. "Your dad would be proud too." Today, when I tell this story, I always emphasize some fundamental lessons I learned. First, that we should always listen to those whom society tends to ignore. Sophie was just a street kid, but her voice carried a vital truth that saved dozens of lives. How many times do we dismiss important information because it comes from sources we consider unreliable? Second, that true courage has no age or social status. Sophie, at 9 years old and with nothing to gain, risked everything to warn strangers about a deadly danger. She could have been ignored, ridiculed, or even punished for invading private property, but she chose to speak because it was the right thing to do. Third, that family is much more than blood and genes. Sophie wasn't born a Harrison, but she became an essential part of our family through love, mutual care, and shared values. The adoption didn't just change her life, it transformed all of us. Finally, that justice sometimes takes time, but it eventually prevails. David Santos died believing that the crimes he discovered would never be punished. But his courage and preparation, combined with his daughter's bravery, ensured that Marcus Thompson and his accomplices faced the consequences of their actions. If this story touched you in any way, I ask you to reflect on the Sophies in your own life, the voices you might be ignoring, the people who need help but are invisible to most. Share this story. Comment on your own experiences about courage and justice, and consider how you can make a difference in the life of someone vulnerable. The David Harrison Foundation continues to grow, but we always need more support to expand our reach, because in the end, everyone deserves a chance to be heard, protected, and loved, regardless of where we come from or how much we have. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. Sophie taught me that sometimes the biggest heroes come in the smallest packages, and that listening can be the bravest act of all.